Alright y'all, here is your daily cut into what happened on Tuesday, January 5th. We only had a 5-game slate, so not a lot of basketball in total, but we still had plenty of close games that had some high intensity moments and few upsets that we gotta get into. So without further ado, I'll have timestamps in the description as always, so you can bounce around from game to game as you please. But again, let's get into what happened in last night's games. In Brooklyn, the Nets got their first win out of their 4 games. They're going to be without Kevin Durant as he deals with the NBA's health and safety protocols, and they did so by Kyrie scoring 29 in 30 minutes as the Nets beat a pretty good Jazz team by 34. Because of the circumstances, the Nets coaching staff, Steve Nash and the other coaches decided to try out a new starting lineup and just some new rotations in general. And part of this meant that Jarrett Allen was finally getting a chance in the starting lineup over DeAndre Jordan, and he delivered. Up against Rudy Gobert, Jarrett Allen finished the night with 19 points, 18 rebounds, and 5 stocks as he just flat out outplayed Rudy Gobert throughout the majority of this game, sparking a lot of memes and trolls that come out in NBA Twitter on Gobert's half. Even Shaq got in on the fun as he continues their little one-sided beef. But while it helped Jarrett Allen's case that DeAndre Jordan only played 9 minutes due to some foul trouble, fans all around the country were clamoring that this should be Jarrett Allen's starting job for the rest of the season at least. Caris LeVert also put up 25 points off the bench, ending his little 3-game cold stretch where he was averaging 8 points a game. So again, very good to see him getting back into the scoring column, and especially without KD now, but without Dinwiddie and KD, it's gonna, some more opportunity is going to fall on his shoulders to perform, and he did so in this one. For the Jazz, Donovan Mitchell quietly had a good game. He had 31 points, but obviously they did lose by 34, so no one's really worried about that. Bojan Bogdanovic also had a rough night. He ended up scoring only 4 points after I was just praising him for breaking out of his early season slump, as it appears that he is not quite out of the radar yet. He is still having some issues shooting the ball and just getting into a rhythm, and again, this is something that he's going to have to resolve if the Jazz want to continue to be a winning team. In Memphis, the Lakers sleepwalked to another win as LeBron and AD both had 26-point double-doubles. And it was another Lakers night where they pretty much coasted until the fourth quarter. Everyone was just kind of having an off shooting night, but of course in the fourth quarter it was LeBron who came and stepped up as usual. He went to his usual routine of trying a little bit but not trying his hardest. He went to his patented post-fade turnarounds as he sealed the game over Memphis. And with this win and the Clippers loss that we're going to get to later in this video, the Lakers have reclaimed first place in the Western Conference at their 6-2 record. And props to Memphis for sticking around. Obviously in the first game of this little 2-game series, they were there for 3 quarters, and then Lakers went on a huge run in the fourth. But in this one, they stuck around with no Ja, no Jaren Jackson, and they continued to be within a possession or two until the last couple seconds of the game. So again, props to Memphis. It was a true team effort as no one on the team surpassed 13 points in the night, although I would like to point out Desmond Bane was on the court at the end of the game, which again, they're injury riddled, so that probably has some say in it, but it's good to see the rookie getting some run time in the clutch minutes against a good Lakers team. D'Anthony Melton also made his return to the lineup and made it known that he was back after he had a block on AD that then led to a transition poster on THT. So again, great to see D'Anthony Melton back. He is one of the key pieces on this Grizzlies roster, so that's good for them. The Nuggets survived the Timberwolves for the second game in a row after another fourth quarter run led by Nikola Jokic, who finished the game with a 35-15 stat line. And so far, in the absence of MPJ due to his health protocols and having to sit out, Will Barton, who was on record of saying earlier in the season that he should be a starter on this team, he's finally been given the chance to be in the starting lineup, and he did a good job of it last night. He put up 20 points in what was probably his best outing of the season, so that will be something to monitor once MPJ comes back, what Mike Malone and the Nuggets decide to do with those rotations. And off the bench for the Nuggets, Facundo Campazzo just continues to be a really fun guy to watch. He is a bit smaller, so he struggles on the defensive end, but on offense, he just makes some very nice looking plays, including some nice passes, so we love ourselves a little European flair in our basketball games here, so always fun to watch a guy like Facundo have a nice night. As for the Timberwolves, D'Angelo Russell led the way with a 33-11 stat line in the losing effort. And if the game prior to this was the Malik Beasley revenge game, then last night was Juancho Hernangomez's opportunity to let the Nuggets know that he was also a part of them and get a little bit of revenge himself, as he put up a 25-8 stat line, which included him shooting 5 of 8 from 3. And to be honest, I've never fully dug into Juancho Hernangomez and the type of player he is, but I've always felt like he had some untapped potential that the Denver Nuggets never seemed to let him play into, so hopefully he can use this time in Minnesota as an opportunity to build off of this performance and potentially find himself in a rotation somewhere. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but once Karl-Anthony Towns gets back into this lineup and fully healthy, I think this Timberwolves team is going to be really fun to watch. They just have a lot of guys who play hard, have been shipped from many teams across the league to Minnesota, and again, it's just a bunch of guys with chips on their shoulders who are willing to put in the work and play hard. And I think if they have had Cat healthy for the entire season, I don't think the record would be looking too bad right now, which says a lot about the Timberwolves this year. In LA, we had our first thriller of the night as the Spurs and Clippers had an amazing game where the Spurs, they got out to a very early lead, were up by 24 at one point. Clippers crawled their way back, which led to a very hectic finish where the San Antonio Spurs ended up prevailing. Patty Mills exploded in this one and had a team-high 27 points as he hit 8 threes. All of his made field goals were from the three-point line. He had 8 of them, and again, it was just a great game for this young Spurs core to play through and get the win. And this is just the type of team that San Antonio is. Like I mentioned, the young core. Keldon Johnson had a great game. Lonnie Walker played all right. DeJounte Murray had a great game. LaMarcus Aldridge made his return to the lineup and just served as a good veteran backbone, same as DeMar DeRozan. And I mean, this Spurs team is dangerous. When they have Popovich, a good head coach like Popovich, they're going to be able to stick with almost any team in this league, and they're definitely going to pull off some more W's like they did last night against some good top-tier teams. As for the Clippers, they were missing Paul George in this one, so that does add in a little bit of reasoning as to why the Spurs might have been able to keep this one close and eventually get the win, but even without PG, Kawhi led the way with a 30-10 stat line for the Clippers. And although they did find themselves down early, they were able to claw their way back as any top caliber team should against a team that is not as good as them. But again, in the end, they even had a lot of chances to tie up the game in the last couple of seconds. Lou Will got a decent look. Luke Kennard had a pretty good look, and Kawhi even got somewhat of a nice look at the end of the game, but all of them just unfortunately did not find their way to the bottom of the net, and as a result, Clippers just ended up losing this one. And on a side note, the Clippers got another really good Nick Batum game, and maybe this is just all a fluke, but if this continues to be a thing where Batum is a steady producer in his starting role, then the Clippers got an absolute steal, getting him on the veteran minimum after Nick Batum has pretty much disappeared from the league for the past couple of seasons. Finally, we ended our nights in Portland, where the Bulls and Blazers also had a pretty hectic finish in a tight game, as Zach LaVine was the one to come up clutch at the end of the game and hit the big three that pretty much served as the nail in the coffin in this one. Statistically, it was Kobe White who led the charge for Chicago, as he had a 21-10 stat line, although to be fair, pretty much everyone on the Bulls roster had a pretty good game last night. And looking back across their last 5 games, they've now won 4 of them, and although a lot of them were against some not so great teams, it was 2 against the Wizards while they are still winless. They beat Dallas when they were without Luka Doncic, but tonight they beat a Portland team that a lot of people are regarding as I'll say they were a lock for the playoffs in the preseason, so for the Bulls to come out and beat them, that says a lot. So while everyone was quick to hop onto their early season struggles and, label them as one of the worst teams in the league, I guess they were just simply that, early season struggles that they have now worked through, and again, they're still missing a lot of their roster, with Lauri Markkanen, Tomas Satoransky, and Chandler Hutchinson have all been on the COVID list, missing games, so I can only imagine how good this Bulls team can get once they, get their full lineup back. As for Portland, Dame and CJ combined for a 50 burger in the L. But more importantly than that, this Blazers defense just continues to get absolutely shredded night in and night out. Terry Stotts is not doing it any favors by playing some very questionable lineups, like, for example, playing Carmelo Anthony and Enes Kanter at the same time in the front court, because, again, if you need a little explanation, neither of those guys are even average defenders at best. They're both below average, and they just get shredded, and they make it just so easy to be scored on. And as of now, I'm going to continue to stick by my statement that unless Dame and CJ are popping off for like a combined 60 or more points a night, I just don't see how this Blazers team is going to rack up a lot of wins as of now, unless they start making some real changes to either their lineups or rotations, or maybe even Terry Stotts is probably approaching hot seat territory as the Blazers continue to lose games that they probably shouldn't. One lineup change I would love to see is Harry Giles getting some more minutes over Enes Kanter. I understand that Kanter is one of the better offensive rebounders and scorers when it comes to scoring in the paint, but that's just not what the Blazers need. They need defense. There's a reason why Nurkic is always the guy that ends up being so physically exhausted by the end of the games, because he has to do so much defensively in the paint for this Portland team. And I think playing Harry Giles could relieve Nurkic of some of those duties. Giles himself is a pretty good defender, but he's also able to score pretty well in the paint, so I don't see why he isn't getting any more of Enes Kanter's minutes as of now.